Hey folks, welcome to the show today. I'm Dr. Dan Thomson. We have a great show. Our guest is Dr. A.J. Tarpoff. He is the State Extension Beef Veterinarian here from Kansas State University. We're going to talk about atypical interstitial pneumonia, which is a disease that's caused a lot of problems in feed yards in late day cattle. Whether you have retained ownership or you're feeding cattle, getting one of those dead slips is not good. Stay tuned, we'll find out more about it.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com. This segment brought to you by Kansas Regenerative Medicine. Your stem cells, your health, your life.
Hey, welcome to the show. Dr. Tarpoff, welcome to the show.
Pleasure to be here.
It's always fun to have Dr. A.J. Tarpoff here. He is the State Extension Beef Veterinarian for Kansas State University, the state of Kansas. Does a lot of work here in the U.S., does work in Canada, and we're lucky to have him here on the show. Wealth of experience, knowledge, and practice, and now back here helping us with programs at K-State. And today we're going to talk about AIPs, or atypical interstitial pneumonia. Mm-hmm. And we've both seen a lot of these cases, but let's just talk a little bit about what AIP is.
Okay, so AIP is a really quick-hitting syndrome that it hits cattle, and it hits the respiratory tract. So for one, and unfortunately we don't know the actual cause, but what ends up happening is we get cellular damage. The small little cells in the inside of the lungs get some type of damage to them, and we have an over-response from the immune system. Now that over-response, it really thickens and enlarges the lung. Okay?
Yep.
So the lung itself, they can't breathe out. The lung will not compress. So at necrops, when we actually look at these animals, a normal lung will be light, pink, fluffy. If you put it in water, it would float. AIP is so thickened, it actually feels like muscle. It feels like liver. And whenever you actually put that in water, it would sink.
Yeah, and you know, we've just seen them. They're so over-enlarged and engorged from all that intercellular debris that expands those lungs that, you know, when it's absolutely amazing. We have something kind of similar in humans called ARDS, the acute respiratory distress syndrome.
Correct.
And just like AIP in cattle and ARDS in humans, we really don't know a single, or, you know, there's multiple things that could cause it.
It really could be a multitude of different things, and that when we don't know what the actual cause is, that tells me this is a multifactorial issue. Okay, so research has shown that there's a lot of different things that it could be, but we've never been able to prove it. There's a similar syndrome in pasture cattle known as fog fever,
right.
A different type of AIP. Now there's a syndrome that we know exactly what the stages of the disease are. They graze lush growing forage, consume large amounts of tryptophan. It gets metabolized in the rumen to 3-methyl-indole, and that 3-methyl-indole goes through the bloodstream and actually damages those cells inside the lung. That is reproducible. Feedlot AIP, unfortunately, is not.
Yeah, and you know, a lot of times we tend to think it's just the feedlot guys that are worried about AIP, and I was just at a function where a cow-calf producer who's feeding cattle wondered, you know, what is this AIP? I had a dead slip. I retained ownership. I had this dead slip. You know, it's hard because this isn't usually in our lightweight cattle, is it?
No. This is not a lightweight cattle issue. Okay, this is our heavier animals. They've been on feed for roughly 90 plus 100 days. These are cattle that have been on feed. They've been stepped up. They've been in good health. They're eating well, and all of a sudden, boom. Okay, so they've been on feed for over 100 days. These are our bigger, more mature animals. And believe it or not, it actually affects our cattle when they're under a month away from regular shipment date.
Yeah, and so I think that we'll leave it there for a break, but you know, that's the thing is that, folks, these are some expensive deads that are happening in the feed yard because these are long day cattle. We get some sort of episode, enlargement of the lungs, and we're going to talk a little bit more with Dr. Tarpoff about this. Thanks for watching DocTalk. More after these messages.
Ag Promo Source is a unique group of marketing specialists with one mission: help your ag business grow. Each affiliate has their own area of expertise, and they work together to bring you advice, products, and services. To get started, visit agpromosource.com. Ag Promo Source. Together we grow.
Valley Vet Supply is devoted to providing information and professional quality products at reasonable prices.
Valley Vet Supply.
No matter where, no matter why, the Veterinary Health Center at Kansas State University is committed to providing quality patient care to animals and exceptional customer service to their owners. From routine checkups to emergency and specialty care, our world-renowned specialists and experienced professionals are here to discover, to teach, and to heal.
Let us know.
How can I help?
How can we help?
This segment brought to you by Santa Fe Trail Meats in Overbrook. Visit us online at sftmeats.com.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here with Dr. A.J. Tarpoff. And we're here at Kansas State University, where Dr. Tarpoff serves as our state beef extension veterinarian for Kansas State University. He's over in the Department of Animal Science and Industry. And AIP is something that, whether you feed cattle yourselves or retain ownership, it's probably one of the most confusing syndromes from the standpoint of what causes it or how to treat it. But what are some of the things that we can tell as far as clinical signs when we see an AIP?
Okay, so clinical signs, the first thing to keep in mind is this hits suddenly. Okay. A lot of the times we might run into an issue where we're checking pins in the early in the day, and sure enough, mid-afternoon, go by to, somebody drives by and sees an AIP. And it happens, it can happen that quick. So what do you see with an AIP? Severe respiratory distress. These animals honestly cannot breathe, okay? And what you'll see is their head hanging down, they'll be open mouth breathing, they may have a wider stance, but the one thing that sets AIP apart is the belly breathing. Because of those enlarged lungs, they're putting so much emphasis to try to breathe out that you can see their abdominal wall actually just flailing and really kind of stressing to help expel any air that's in there. And so, it's very noticeable. You can see them from across the pen. You will see that abdomen really trying to get a big oomph to basically just exhale.
Yeah, and you'll see that's also why they'll start to get that sway back when usually they're flat back,
right,
and get that expiratory grunt.
And it truly is a grunt. Yeah. Now that grunt and that noise they make, we have a couple other issues that can cause some noisy breathers.
Right.
Which is like laryngitis or honkers or tracheal edema. Now laryngitis happens much further up the airway, and you'll hear them snoring when they breathe in and out.
Gotcha.
And then honkers, it's whenever they breathe in that the trachea collapses. Okay, so that's when we hear that inspiratory grunt. Now, AIP is the expiratory grunt. So they make noise and they're trying to expel air, not breathe in.
Gotcha. So based on where the noise occurs and during the time of breathing, specifically, and the size of the cattle and how quickly this comes on, it can be pretty diagnostic just on the clinical signs.
Absolutely it can. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is AIPs are very common. They commonly occur during the hot, dry summer months. The same time that we also run into heat stress issues.
Okay.
And heat stress in cattle will also show open mouth breathing signs, but again, it's diagnostic because heat stressed animals, they pant like a dog. Very fast moving air. They're trying to cool themselves down. AIP, again, they'll be open mouth breathing, but it's that belly breathing, that exaggerated belly breathing that really sets it apart.
Gotcha.
Yep.
Well, it's pretty interesting that you can tell so much from when they're breathing or when the noise, how they're breathing, and you didn't know there's so much science that goes into that. Yep. But pretty amazing. Anything as far as rectal temperature, these normal rectal temp?
They will be until they succumb to any type of heat stress. Because they have the inability to regulate their temperature through breathing and exhaling temperature, they can run into a fever later on in the disease course. But early stages, that animal will not have a temperature.
Gotcha.
Yep.
All right, folks, we're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to talk about some of the causes of AIP and maybe some of the things we can do to try to help these animals that are suffering from it. You're watching DocTalk. We'll be right back.
Join us for the second annual early bird sale at Gardner Angus Ranch, Monday, January 28th at 10 a.m. Up for sale are 53 20-month-olds and 127 17-month-olds, 180 Angus bulls total, plus 200 bred commercial Angus heifers as 5 load lots. Catalog available at GardnerAngus.com. You can watch and bid online at liveauctions.tv. Don't just buy a breed, buy a brand at Gardner Angus Ranch's Early Bird Bull Sale, January 28th, Ashland, Kansas.
As fourth-generation farmers themselves, Heinen Brothers Ag Service understands the risk and rewards of farming. So when it comes to quality aerial and ground application, fertilizer, ag chemicals, and anhydrous ammonia, call Heinen Brothers Ag today, 800-760-4964.
Did you know long-range planning through the checkoff can help keep your business profitable? To successfully pass on cattle operations from one generation to the next, it's important to promote beef and keep farms and ranches profitable. Your beef checkoff helps do that.
I'm Tom Perrier. Our ranch is called Dale Banks Angus. Dale Banks is not a person, but it's a place. This ranch was started by my great-grandfather. He came from northwest England, and his farm there was called Dale Banks, and so he called his ranch here in the Flint Hills Dale Banks. The beef checkoff today has fulfilled a lot of needs that our industry had over the years. We were very involved in trying to get the beef checkoff passed back in the 70s and early 80s because we saw the need then, and the beef checkoff, I think, has fulfilled a lot of those needs.
I think some of the biggest bonuses that we've gotten from the beef checkoff in the last 20 years have been twofold, both in the research phase of the industry. One being the Beef Quality Assurance Program that showed us just how much money we could capture by simply doing things like moving the injection sites from the hip and rump of the animal up to the neck, where we had less high-valued cuts. That drove millions of dollars into our industry. The other thing that our beef industry did about 15 years ago was embark on new product development, things like the flat iron steak and things that used to get ground into hamburger and other low-valued cuts today are sold for a premium, and that too, just like the Beef Quality Assurance Program, has driven huge dollars into our industry that we all get to share.
Matt's the primary driver behind the operation right now, and he's the 6th generation, and his children will be the 7th generation.
I hope our kids are better at telling our beef industry's story. I think the last several years the beef checkoff has shown us how to do that better. They've given us some tools to do that, so we need to do a better job of telling the wonderful story that we have, and I hope our kids can continue to do that.
Sure Crop Fertilizers was started by my father, Don Sherman, and my mother, Shirley Sherman. Family business that started in the 80s. We predominantly focus on plant nutrients and what we can do to give growers better responses with the fertilizer dollars that they do, and what we can do to make those things work better for the grower. We're based out of Seneca, Kansas. We work with growers in their soil analysis to figure out what they need, and then we can put those in a blend that gives them the best results, and so that we can deliver that direct to their farm, so that they have those nutrients where they need them, when they need them, and so that they can apply them in a manner that's very efficient to them and works well in their planting systems and what they're doing. Sure Crop Fertilizers has been around for a long time. We always say we're big enough to take care of everything you need, but we're small enough to do it quickly. You can get a hold of us at 1-800-635-4743. Our website is surecropfertilizers.com, and you can always email me at Corey@surecrop.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Soybean Commission. Progress powered by Kansas farmers.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson and Dr. A.J. Tarpoff. We're from Kansas State University, where Dr. Tarpoff serves as the State Extension Beef Veterinarian for the entire state of Kansas and beyond. You've done quite a bit of work outside the state of Kansas and outside the United States recently even.
I have.
On a lot of different projects. So we're proud to have him here at Kansas State. We're proud of what he does and thankful he'd take the time to be on the show to discuss AIPs. And let's talk a little bit about how often this occurs.
Well, it's been estimated from some survey data that upwards to 3.1% of animals that are placed into the feedlot will succumb to AIP.
Wow, that's pretty high.
That is extremely high. And it's disheartening because we don't understand the entire disease process, yet it's still happening pretty often.
Yeah, that's, I mean, you think that prevalence rate, and you probably think what regular respiratory disease is probably 10% when you look at all cattle that enter the feed yard. So this is significant.
It's significant from a respiratory disease basis. It's directly behind BRD, bovine respiratory disease. The difference being that this is affecting our heavier, healthy animals that we have a lot of money into. Okay, we have a lot of feed, we have a lot of time, and we've had a lot of growth in developing this animal all the way from birth, and boom, it hits them.
Yep. So with a 3.1% prevalence rate, obviously people that feed enough cattle are going to have these show up as a dead slip or on their closeout and things of that nature. Let's talk a little bit about some of the risk factors or things that you know, although we don't know what causes it, we know some things that are happening around the time we see these cases.
No, and one of the biggest ones, we talked about dry, hot summer months.
Yep.
What happens in dry, hot summer areas with every time a feed truck drives by the feed alley? Dust.
Yep.
Okay, dust could be a pretty big indicator and a risk factor when it comes to AIP. So we can do some things to help manage and control some of the dust issues, especially down our feed alleys. Okay, we can water at certain times of the day to keep those dust down. Even certain types of gravel with bigger chunks of gravel won't kick up as much dust whenever vehicles drive by.
Gotcha. So, and you know, when we go back to talking about ARDS, the acute respiratory distress syndrome in humans, 60 different known etiologies: smoke inhalation, dust inhalation, all of them being, and not necessarily smoke like from a cigarette, but smoke from like a fire.
Right.
Can be some of the risk factors. What are some of the others that you see in feed yards as far as potential risk factors for AIPs?
One big risk factor, I believe, is feed disruption. Okay,
Yep.
and not necessarily there was a feed disruption like the animals didn't eat, but possible the mixing of the batch was done a little bit different. We changed ingredients. Some of our feed additives may have been put in at a lower amount or a higher amount. There's something that has been changed, all the way down to the time that these animals are fed on a daily basis. So anything that can change, just cause any types of changes in feed consumption, may be a risk factor with leading up to AIPs.
Yeah, and you'd listed some others as far as infectious disease, maybe BRSV.
There has been some indications that BRSV, bovine respiratory syncytial virus, could be implemented in some type of, some of this interstitial type pneumonia. Although it's not been proven, some animals have had titers of BRSV. So what that truly means, unfortunately, we don't know for sure.
Well, let's take a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about risk factors and wrap up. So we're lucky to have him here. We're lucky to have him at Kansas State. Dr. A.J. Tarpoff, we'll see you after the break.
Clyde Sutton, Ness City, Kansas. Lived on this place all my life. About a year and a half ago, got to where I couldn't saddle a horse. The pain was terrible. Read about stem cell. First it wasn't for me, then they started doing neck and back. Went and had it done. As you can see, I saddled a horse. I'm still building fence. Love to shoot a shotgun rifle, and I'm able to participate, not like I used to, but nevertheless I can do the things I used to do, and life is good.
Hey folks, Dr. Dan from DocTalk here. Thanks for joining me for our Cattle First tip today, sponsored by Behringer Ingelheim Vet Medica. And we're talking about injection sites. And injection sites, all of our injections go in the neck. Here's a picture of the injection site triangle that you can see is underneath the nuchal ligament, above the vertebral column, and in front of the point of the shoulder. This injection site triangle is where we will put all of our injections for cattle. Now, if we're going to do 2 injections in that area, we put about a hand's width apart between the 2 injections. Nothing goes in the top butt, nothing in the round, nothing over the ribs. Now, if you're going to do a sub-Q injection, you go in at a 45-degree angle with a 5/8 inch or half-inch needle. If you're going to do an intramuscular injection, you go in perpendicular to the calf with an 1 to 1.5 inch length needle. This is your cattle first tip.
Hi, I'm Kim Mandarin with Hardy Insurance. I'm here to help you with all of your farm and ranch needs. When it comes to protecting your operation and your family, you need a name you can trust at a price you can afford. Call me today or visit hardyaviationins.com.
Tarwater Farm and Home is a 40-year-old local family-owned business. Clothing for work and play, seeds and feeds, boots, toys for the kids, and tools you'll need for around the house and farm. And a service department to keep them in top running order. It's a big store, so take some time to see what they have for your farm and home. Tarwater's everyday pricing is like others' sale prices. When you need it, they've got it. Tarwater Farm and Home, 4107 North Topeka Boulevard.
Healthy cows start with the new Hired Hand automatic livestock sprayer. Rancher invented to provide an efficient alternative to pour-on and injectable parasite management systems. The portable design allows cattle to treat themselves head to hoof. Strategic device placement with pass-through activation technology takes the stress out of parasite treatment for cattle and the rancher, leaving more time to tend to other vital tasks on the farm. To learn more, visit cowsprayer.com. The new Hired Hand makes healthy cows easy.
This segment brought to you by Kansas Farm Bureau, the voice of agriculture. To join today or more information, go to kfb.org or find us on Facebook or Twitter.
Hey folks, welcome back to DocTalk. Dr. Dan Thomson here with my friend and colleague, Dr. A.J. Tarpoff. We're glad to have him here. Dr. Tarpoff serves as the State Extension Beef Veterinarian for Kansas State University, and we're talking about AIPs. Yep. And how do we treat them?
Well, to be honest with you, treatment is pretty unrewarding when it comes to AIPs. And that's one of the big difficult things about this syndrome is we know the prevalence is pretty high, and we don't really know what causes it. But one thing we do know is we don't have a treatment that works very well, which is difficult to manage. And
but that's the same as humans.
It is. So treatment, we don't have a good treatment. It's been tried that they'll use some kind of symptomatic treatments with some steroids, some different things to help decrease the inflammation. But to be honest with you, it doesn't work. So what do? Well, our mainstay to help combat some of these issues is we know that they're a little bit later in the feeding period. Yep. We know they're almost finished. That we'll salvage slaughter these animals if we can.
Yep.
Now, if we are going to salvage slaughter them, the biggest thing that we need to make sure is that they're free of any type of volatile residue or any meat withdrawal.
Yep. Yep, absolutely. And since it's not an infectious disease, they will slaughter these animals.
Absolutely. The one thing to keep in mind is AIP is not caused by an infectious agent. So AIP does not get transmitted from one animal to another. This is an individual basis. It's just an overstimulated immune response to something. So these animals still can make a safe, wholesome food.
Prevention?
Well, there are some different things that we can do to help prevent some of these things. We talked about the risk factors that we can right. Try to cut down on some of the risk. There's also some things that we can actually feed. The ionophore called monensin or rumensin is a feed ionophore that helps regulate feed intake and has had some pretty good success in decreasing the occurrence of some of our AIP rates.
Yeah, and so when we look at feed additives, probably making sure that we have rumensin so that we have consistent intakes in our animals, kind of modulates intake, and then the MGA is another one.
Correct. So MGA, it helps suppress estrus in our feedlot heifers, and it has been shown that almost a 3-to-1 ratio of heifers as opposed to steers get affected with AIP. Some of those studies have shown it. So we had to take a big, broad look at it. Okay, what's the difference with these heifers? And something to think about is we feed MGA to keep the animals from going through estrus. Now, if there's some feed disruption and the heifers actually come back and start showing heat, it does affect their feed intake. It'll drop off and then get high and then go low again. So ensuring that we have proper MGA levels could be a very helpful preventative when it comes to dealing with AIP.
Well, Really appreciate you being on the show. Wealth of information. Find him on the internet. Send him email questions, things of that nature. He'll do a great job of answering them. Thank you for watching DocTalk today. Remember, always work with your local veterinarian. And if you want to find out more about what we do on DocTalk, you can find us at www.doctalktv.com. Thanks for watching DocTalk today, folks. Dr. Dan Thomson with Dr. AJ Tarpoff, and we'll see you down the road.
Closed captioning brought to you by Ag Promo Source. Together we grow. Learn more at agpromosource.com.